I'm not the paranoid type. Never was. I grew up in a boring, safe suburb, went to a decent college, and never really had any close calls that made me fear for my life or anything like that. My life was normal, predictable. I had a few good friends, a stable job, and not much else to worry about. Everything was exactly how I wanted it to be. Calm, uneventful, safe. That changed last year. I was 24 and had just moved out of my parents' place. It was time. I wanted to take that next step, be independent, have my own space. I found a small 2-bedroom apartment in the city. Nothing fancy. It wasn't a luxury high-rise or anything, just a simple unit in a decent neighborhood. I wasn't exactly rolling in cash, so I needed to find a roommate to split the rent. Since I didn't have any friends in town yet, I put out a listing on Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace. The responses I got were a mixed bag. Some sounded fine, others were a little off. One guy offered to pay in alternative currency. Another told me he was a night owl and used to be a professional gamer. One or two just never showed up when we scheduled to meet. But then, after a week or two of awkward conversations and no-shows, a guy named Tyler reached out. He was a little older than me, maybe 26 or 27, and said he worked third shift at a distribution center across town. He didn't smoke, didn't party, and seemed like he was just looking for somewhere quiet to crash. We met at a local coffee shop to talk things over, and he came across as polite, soft-spoken, and a little reserved. He said he liked to read, kept to himself, and wasn't into the whole scene. I was honestly just relieved to find someone who didn't seem like a total mess, so we signed the lease together. He moved in the following week. At first, everything seemed great. He was respectful of the space, kept the place clean, and, most importantly, he was rarely home when I was. Tyler worked odd hours. He'd leave around 9 p.m. most nights and wouldn't get back until around 3 a.m. It was like living with a ghost, honestly. We didn't interact much at first. I was still getting settled in, starting to build my life in the city, and Tyler seemed content to keep to himself. There was no drama, no weirdness. Everything felt fine. But after a couple of weeks, things started to get odd. Little things at first. It was easy to brush them off as coincidences or me just being paranoid. One night, I was making a sandwich in the kitchen, and I realized that the string cheese I'd just bought was missing. I could have sworn I had left it on the counter, but it wasn't there. I figured I must have eaten it and forgotten. A couple of days later, the same thing happened with a yogurt. Just a couple bites missing. Nothing big. At first, I thought it was me. Maybe I was just forgetful. But then, there were other small things. My desk chair would sometimes be slightly out of place. Once, I noticed my shampoo bottle was turned around, the label facing the wall like someone had used it and tried to put it back quickly. It didn't seem like much at the time. Just weird little moments that didn't add up. But the more it happened, the more uneasy I became. Then came the discovery of Tyler's room. It was strange. He didn't decorate at all. His room was sparse. No posters, no pictures, no clothes strewn about. Just a bed, a desk, and a small bookshelf. It looked like something straight out of a furniture catalog. Impersonal, almost clinical. It didn't feel like a space where someone lived. It didn't even look lived in. One night, I was heading to the bathroom when I noticed his door was slightly ajar with the light on inside. Out of curiosity, I peeked in. He wasn't there. I thought he might have gone to work early or something. But when I looked at the floor, I noticed his shoes were still there, by the door. His room was completely empty, not a single item that gave any sense of personality. No clothes hanging from the door, no books piled on the desk. It looked sterile, like someone had been in and cleaned the room out, almost like it was a showroom. But what really caught my attention was the lock on his door. It was a deadbolt, installed on the outside. That was the moment it clicked. I stood there for a minute, just staring at it. Why would someone need to lock themselves in from the outside? The apartment was old, sure, and maybe it was an old feature from a previous tenant, but that didn't sit right with me. I didn't say anything to him about it, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. As the days went by, the weirdness kept building. One night, I left my phone charging in the kitchen while I went to take a shower. When I came back, the phone was still there, but the charging cable had been unplugged. It didn't seem like much, but the more I thought about it, the more it felt wrong. The weirdness didn't stop with small things either. One evening, about a month into living together, I came home from work, put my stuff down, and started making dinner when I heard a knock at the front door. I opened it to find a woman, maybe in her early 30s, standing there. She had short brown hair, and there was an unease in her eyes. She asked, "Does Tyler live here?" I said yes, but that he wasn't home right then. She glanced past me, looking around the apartment. Her gaze darted to the hallway, like she was scanning for something. Then, she asked how long I'd known him. I said about a month, and she visibly relaxed for a second, but there was still tension in her body. "That's not his name," she said. "His name is Adam. He used to live in my building." She went on to explain that Adam had rented a room in her apartment about a year before. He had seemed normal at first, quiet, a little shy, not really intrusive. But then, she started noticing strange things. Her toothbrush would be wet in the mornings when she hadn't used it. Her closet would be left slightly ajar, and sometimes things would be moved around. She even found that her clothes were folded in a different way than how she'd left them. It made her feel uneasy, but it wasn't until she found a hidden camera in the vent above her bed that she filed a report. When she confronted him, he disappeared. She seemed desperate, almost like she was trying to warn me, but also trying to avoid causing trouble. I asked if she had any proof, and she said she didn't, just that she'd seen a photo of him on a friend's social media. It was a background shot from a party across the street. She said she was certain it was him. I didn't know what to think. I told Tyler about it later that night, and he laughed it off, saying that his ex was a bit unhinged and was probably just stalking him. I wanted to believe him. I really did. I let it go, but deep down something didn't sit right. A few nights later, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I was working late on a project, and around 2:30 a.m., I had to use the bathroom. I stepped out of my room and froze. From the living room, I could hear the faint sound of movement. At first, I thought it was just the house settling, but then I realized it was a deliberate, purposeful sound. I peeked into the living room. Tyler was sitting on the couch in the dark, staring at the TV. The screen was off. "Everything okay?" I asked, stepping into the room. He didn't respond at first. Then slowly he said, "Can't sleep." He stood up, walked past me, and went back to his room. I stood there for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. Something about it felt wrong. The stillness of him, the way he didn't seem to acknowledge me fully. It was like he was in a trance. I went to bed that night feeling uneasy. So uneasy, in fact, that I shoved a chair under my bedroom door, just in case. But the weirdness didn't end there. A few days later, I was rushing to work in the morning and realized I'd forgotten my work badge. I turned around and went back to the apartment, figuring it wouldn't take long. But when I got inside, something felt off. The apartment was quiet, but I could hear faint movement coming from Tyler's room. It didn't make sense. He was supposed to be at work. I quietly approached his door. It was slightly open, and as I looked inside, I froze. The walls were covered in photos, Polaroids, dozens of them, of the apartment, the living room, the hallway, the bathroom, even my room. Some were taken from outside my window. Others were shot through the crack in his door. But the worst ones were the pictures of me sleeping. I felt like I was going to pass out. I quickly grabbed my phone and snapped pictures of everything. The photos, the notebooks, everything. I didn't know what else to do. I backed out of the room, my hands shaking. That's when I found the notebook. It was black, a spiral-bound journal sitting on his desk. I opened it and my stomach dropped. The pages were filled with entries about me, about my routines, my habits, my movements. 2:14 a.m., showered. 2:25 a.m., on phone with mom. 2:43 a.m., watching YouTube videos. Sound on medium. It was a log, a detailed account of everything I did. But that was just the beginning. He had written about other people, about other roommates, about their lives, their patterns. There were notes on their movements, who they'd been with, when they'd left and returned. I felt like I was going to throw up. I grabbed my things and left immediately. I didn't go back to the apartment that night. I went to my brother's place, unable to stop thinking about everything I had just discovered. My brain was on overdrive. The next day, I filed a police report. I showed them everything. The photos, the notebook, the weirdness about Tyler's ex, everything. The police seemed concerned but also confused. There wasn't enough to charge him with anything yet. When I returned to the apartment with the police later that day, Tyler was gone. He had left without a trace. No note, no belongings. It was as though he had never been there. The police found a locked box under his bed. They took it. They also found 2 tiny hidden cameras, one in the living room vent and another above the hallway near my bedroom door. The cops traced the ID he had given the landlord. It was fake. There was no Tyler M. in the DMV system, no real history. They found no digital footprint for him anywhere. They managed to track down a storage unit he had rented under a different alias across town. Inside, they found even more photographs, more logs, more footage, and there were other people, other roommates. He had been doing this for years, but they couldn't charge him with anything concrete. There were no actual threats, just an unsettling pattern of voyeurism, but no physical harm done. He had been careful, too careful. And just like that, he vanished again.